On April 20th, 1999, a school shooting and attempted bombing occurred at Columbine High School in Columbine, Colorado, United States. The perpetrators, 12th grade students Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, murdered 12 students and one teacher. 10 students were killed in the school library, where Harris and Klebold subsequently committed suicide. 21 additional people were injured by gunshots, and gunfire was also exchanged with the police. Another 3 people were injured trying to escape. At the time, it was the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history until the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in February 2018. It is also the deadliest mass shooting in the state of Colorado. Harris and Klebold had intended for the attack to be primarily a bombing and secondarily a shooting, but the failed detonation of the several homemade bombs they planted in the school caused the pair to launch a shooting attack. 2 bombs were set up as diversions at another location away from the school, one of which partially detonated. The motive remains inconclusive, however. They had planned the attack for at least a year and hoped to have a large number of victims. The police were slow to enter the school and were heavily criticized for not intervening during the shooting. The incident resulted in the introduction of the IARD tactic, which is used in active shooter situations. Columbine also resulted in an increased emphasis on school security with zero-tolerance policies. Debates and moral panic were sparked over American gun culture and gun control laws, high school cliques, subcultures, outcasts, and school bullying, as well as teenage use of pharmaceutical antidepressants, the internet, and violence in video games and movies. The Columbine Massacre, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. This case study has been sponsored by Kawaii Honey. Thank you, Kawaii Honey, for sponsoring another case study. You're really keeping me going here. I love it. Kawaii wants to know, what aspects in their charts possess them to become mass shooters? So we're going to discuss those aspects. So first, we're going to start off with Dylan Klebold. Dylan Klebold was born September 11th, 1981. I think that's very interesting that he was born on September 11th. He has his sun in Virgo. He has a whole Libra stellium, Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, Venus. He has Uranus in Scorpio, conjoined to his black moon Lilith, Neptune in Sagittarius, South Node at the 29th degree of Capricorn, Moon in Aquarius. He has Chiron in Taurus, North Node in Cancer, Mars in Leo. So first, let me read a little bit about Dylan's background. Dylan Bennett Klebold was born on September 11th, 1981 in Lakewood, Colorado to Thomas and Sue Klebold. On the day after the shooting, Klebold's mother remembered that shortly after Klebold's birth, she described what felt like a shadow had been cast over her, warning her that this child would bring her great sorrow. I think I still make of it what I did at the time. It was a passing feeling that went over very quickly like a shadow. Wow, that is deep. Sue said in an interview with Colorado Public Radio, Klebold was soon diagnosed with pyloric stenosis, a condition in which the opening between the stomach and small intestine thickens, causing severe vomiting during the first few months of life. So he does have a Cancer North Node, 29th degree, so that can produce problems with the stomach. His Aquarius moon can produce abnormalities of the stomach. Klebold's parents had met when they were both studying art at Ohio State University. After they both graduated, they married in 1971, with their first child, Byron, being born in 1978. Thomas had initially worked as a sculptor, but then moved over to engineering to be more financially stable. With their first, Sue had worked in assistance services with disabled children. Furthermore, Klebold's parents were pacifists. and attended a Lutheran church with their children. Both Klebold and his older brother attended confirmation classes in accordance with the Lutheran tradition. As had been the case with his older brother, Klebold was named after a renowned poet, Dylan Thomas. At the family home, the Klebolds also observed some rituals in keeping with Klebold's maternal grandfather's Jewish heritage. Klebold attended Normandy Elementary School for first and second grade, and then transferred to Governor's Ranch Elementary School, where he was part of the challenging high intellectual potential students program for gifted children. According to reports, Klebold was exceptionally bright as a young child, although he appeared somewhat sheltered at elementary school. When he transitioned to King Carl Middle School, he found it difficult. Fellow classmates recall Klebold being painfully shy and quiet, often to an uncomfortable degree. Klebold's parents were unconcerned with the fact that Klebold found the changing of schools uneasy. His shyness is coming from that Capricorn South Node, as they assumed it was just regular behavior among young adolescents. During his earlier school years, Klebold played baseball, soccer, and t-ball. Klebold was in Cub Scouts with friends Brooks Brown, whom he was friends with since the first grade. Brown lived near the house Harris' parents had bought when they finally settled in Littleton, and rode the same bus as Harris. Shortly after Klebold had met Harris, and the pair quickly became best friends. Later, Harris introduced Klebold to his friend Nathan Dykeman, who also attended their middle school, and they all became a tight-knit group of friends. So it seemed like he had a pretty normal childhood, pretty early, humble beginnings. All right, so let's get into his natal chart. So birth number 11, that can produce internal and external conflicts. It points to home, family, mother, ethnicity. In his case, he was part Jewish, which says a lot considering the fact that they were very much on the anti-Semitic end. Represents Eric in him and the conflict between the two of them. Life path number 12 breaks down to 3. 12 is sacrifice victim. Teachers and students. 12 very much deals with education. It deals with the teacher and the student, as well as intelligence. He was designated as gifted and talented, and 3s can be very intelligent. Beliefs. So his beliefs came into play big time when it came to the motivations that led to the shooting. His ascendant is at the 18th degree of Libra. You know, I talk about that 18th degree being the murderous degree. So this is representative of Dylan murdering people. Also, the 18th degree is prone to violence and interpersonal conflicts, including conflicts with family. Pluto is at the 22nd degree. That 22nd degree produces sudden death. It's conjoined to his ascendant. So 22nd degree, sudden death. It also produces situations where you have basically just two options, control or be controlled. And Pluto being conjoined to the ascendant can cause him to be easily influenced by others, especially because it's in Libra. And Pluto conjoined to the ascendant can make one murderous, or where they are known as a murderer, or they're called a murderer. Of course, not in every case. It can also make him hateful, jealous, and self-loathing. And this can also deal with Dylan being used as a pawn. More about this later. So here it is. As you can see, Pluto is conjoined to his ascendant. He also has Jupiter conjoined to his ascendant. So his sun is at the 18th degree of Virgo. So that 18 resurfaces. It's squaring Neptune at the 22nd degree of Sagittarius. So that 22nd degree resurfaces. So Kawaii Honey, without even getting into aspects, the degrees that he has in his chart makes him prone to, in the very least, have murderous thoughts. And then that Pluto conjoined to his ascendant can make him actually act out these murderous thoughts. So This square makes him extremely impressionable, especially when it comes to a friend because his sun is in the 11th house. Also lacking a sense of realism with this square, lacking pride and ego, making it easy to take one's life and others, a sense of hopelessness, feeling isolated, being treated like an outcast or feeling like an outcast. Also, this could deal with his father is weak or an addict. Also, when you have Sun square Neptune, a lot of times you're lacking free will, could even be under mind control with Neptune being in the third house. So he had Sun quincunx moon. That moon is at the 16th degree of Aquarius. 16 can manifest as catastrophe. So this quincunx is representative of his attempts to keep his homosexual tendencies under wraps, especially in terms of his attraction to Eric. Also, his attempts to hide his Jewish heritage from Eric, but he does let that slip out one day. He goes totally left in response to not fitting in. Mother was too liberal and hands-off when it came to rearing him, lacking correction. Also, I'm wondering with this quincunx, he could have been the subject of a government-run experiment. The moon is ruling the 10th house. 10th house is government. 11th house is experiment, with the sun being in the 11th. So this can be with that Virgo sun in the 11th, serving a cause or an agenda. Sun semi-square Mars represents Eric's influence upon Dylan, my bad. Represents the sexual tension between Eric and Dylan. Also, it represents his insecurities that are heightened when he's around tough guys, jocks, etc. Father is subservient to a higher power, no choice in the matter. So again, whenever you hear about these high-profile shootings, know that not all of these stories are organic or are naturally occurring, because we are living in times where the powers that be, they will orchestrate certain events to further their agenda. And for the longest, there's been this agenda to take away the guns of United States citizens, to disarm United States citizens. Mother could be the one with the government ties. Mom could be a communist. Also easily irritated and angered. Now, Dylan had Mars in Leo, sesqui-square Neptune in Sagittarius. And with this, his ego orientation is lacking, and this can produce a very weak sense of self. So coupled with that Sun square Neptune, we can basically conclude that Dylan was the more docile of the two. Lacking leadership ability. So Mars in Leo produces leadership ability, but since it's in sesqui-square with Neptune, that points to a lack of leadership ability. Severe inferiority complex. Feeling like an outcast in school with Neptune in the third house. Being ashamed of his sexuality. Now, it was rumored that Dylan and Eric were lovers. Now, that those rumors were never founded, but the rumor was there. I wouldn't be surprised if there was some truth to that, or at least where Dylan had a sexual attraction to Eric. Brainwashing, especially with Neptune in the third. Being a puppet. So this made me think about his mother, because Dylan's Mars is in his 10th house. That's the house of the mother. And with Mars being in Leo, I was like, could the mother be one of the actors perhaps? Now, the mother is an activist, but on the pacifist side. But you have some activists, even the pacifist ones, that are such extremists that they might be on board with some type of exercise that results in more tougher gun laws, perhaps. But this is speculation on my part. However, I'm not the first person who has questioned the official story, And again, a lot of times when you're seeing these high profile mass shootings, they are pre-orchestrated. Drugs and alcohol bring out the worst in him. Mother could have given him drugs that alter his behavior, of course, under a doctor's supervision. So the interesting thing about the mother, Sue Klebold, is that she claimed that she had no idea that Dylan was depressed for the past 2 years. But I wouldn't be surprised if he was put on medication when he was young. And that could have altered his moods and behavior. Will act out lyrics in music and video games, but also scenes from films. So this aspect makes him very impressionable, but in the worst way. Striking fear in the hearts of his schoolmates on the day of the shooting. And this can be viewed as a mass shooting aspect. And it can manifest as blind rage and where he lacks self-restraint. He has Venus and Pluto and Libra squaring his Capricorn South Node and Cancer North Node. And the nodes are at the 29th degree. That 29th degree I always talk about produces high pressure situations, can produce conflicts involving home, his mother, and also culture. And the fact that he was half Jewish, he was trying to hide that from Eric because they were supposedly Nazi sympathizers. Now, this square can cause him to be painfully shy and socially awkward. A healthy relationship with both parents is lacking. Being caught in the middle of his parents. This could be government interference, perhaps, with the Capricorn South Node. Could come from a military background, if not the father, could be grandfather with the South Node in the 4th, despite parents being pacifists. Or that Capricorn in the 4th can just deal with his Jewish heritage, but it can also deal with the fact that he's coming from an elite background. So his grandfather was a millionaire. So Sue Klebold comes from, you could say, rich beginnings, and hence Dylan. So I found that to be quite interesting. So his conflict regarding being a Nazi sympathizer and being Jewish, Capricorn rules the Jews. Issues with being disciplined, parents may have been too lenient. Again, his parents were pacifists. Mercury conjunct Saturn and Jupiter in Libra, 12th house. Prone to depression, especially when comparing himself to others. Military style exercises via the video game Doom. Virtual reality kind of life, being out of touch with reality. And again, Dylan and Eric spent a lot of time playing the video game Doom. Also listening to dark music from a foreign band, Rammstein in particular, but also KMFDM, I think that's the name of the other group. Rammstein was cited in relation to the Columbine High School massacre in 1999, when a photo of Eric Harris wearing a Rammstein t-shirt in the 11th grade was revealed. There was no evidence to correlate the band and the massacre. In response to the shooting, the band issued a statement. The members of Rammstein expressed their condolences and sympathy to all affected by the recent tragic events in Denver. They wish to make it clear that they have no lyrical content or political beliefs that could have possibly influenced such behavior. Additionally, members of Rammstein have children of their own in whom they continually strive to instill healthy and nonviolent values. Well, just pull up a scene from one of their concerts and you'll see how they get down. Also with this conjunction, these conjunctions in the 12th house, Harris and Klebold were both avid fans of KMFDM, an industrial band led by German multi-instrumentalist Sasha Kniziko. It was revealed that lyrics to KMFDM's songs Son of a Gun, Stray Bullet, and Waste were posted on Harris' website, and that the date of the massacre, April 20th, coincided with both the release of the date of the album Adios and the birthday of Adolf Hitler. Harris noted the coincidence of the album's title and April release date in his journal. In response, KMFDM's Kniziko issue a statement that KMFDM was against war, oppression, fascism, and violence against others, and that none of us condone any Nazi beliefs whatsoever. So he has moon in Aquarius. That Aquarius moon speaks to his mother being an activist. But that moon in Aquarius is in trine with his Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, and ascendant in Libra. So he was deemed to be gifted and talented, and these trines are representative of that. Also, this is basically him being a computer geek, being part of a group. Now, it was rumored that they were part of the trench coat mafia, or some thought he was, and they did put on the black trench coats. So there's some discrepancies about this, because on the day of the Columbine shootings, I think it was Eric's father, he called the police, and he was saying that he thinks his son is involved because he's one of the members of the trench coat mafia. Also, with these trines, they make him a perfect candidate for a programmed government assassin, with the moon ruling the 10th house. 10th house is government. And then also that moon in Aquarius, like I said, mom is an activist. So I'm questioning the mom's influence. Being part of an experiment in mind control, perhaps. And this could be to see the effects that certain music and video games have upon the mind of impressionable subjects. Uranus and Scorpio sextile South Node, trine North Node. Could be indication of a government experiment, or you could say exercise. And again, the trench coat mafia theme. But also, they attracted fans and followers as a result of the national coverage of the incident. So even though they killed themselves, allegedly, there was, of course, you're going to have some people cheering them on and becoming fans of what they did. And it wasn't a lot of teenagers, but as you'll see when I show some of the artwork that some of these fans have created, you'll see that there was a wave of students, teenagers, young adults that were basically very much enamored by these two, I guess you could say. So Dylan had a yacht in his chart involving Pluto, Neptune, and Chiron, the 22nd degree being compounded. Let me just back up. So, okay, so Pluto's at the 22nd degree, Neptune is at the 22nd degree, and Chiron at 22nd degree, sudden death, and it can produce situations where you're either in control or you're being controlled. So again, the whole situation with the theory that this could have been a government exercise, and I believe that it was, and it could serve two purposes. One purpose is an experiment to see, like I was saying, how certain drugs and also video games and music have an effect upon impressionable minds, but also the purpose was to strike fears in the hearts of the American public so that they would be more conducive to, supporting more stricter gun laws. So this yacht made him very open to outside suggestion, getting caught up playing the video game Doom. Doom gets too real. Developing the mindset of a murderer, his training with Neptune ruling the 6th house. MK Ultra mind programming via video game Doom, but also music perhaps. And again, this is speculation on my part, but other people have wondered if this was more so a military exercise. So it says here, the series usually focuses on the exploits of an unnamed space marine, often referred to as Doom Guy or Doom Slayer, operating under the auspices of the Union Aerospace Corporation, who fights hordes of demons and the undead in order to save Earth from an apocalyptic invasion. The original Doom is considered one of the first pioneering first-person shooter games. Also, this yacht is pointing to the bombs that were placed in the school cafeteria but were not detonated. So yachts can deal with where you set out to do something, but then it ends up blowing up in your face, or it ends up becoming disastrous. Hearing demonic voices with Chiron and Taurus in the 8th house. So this could be akin to a schizophrenic aspect, especially that Neptune quincunx Chiron. But that whole yod, it could be he was under demonic influence through certain drugs, music, and the video games, and then whatever programming was being done. He has another yod in his chart involving Neptune Chiron in the midheaven. And again, this is where I'm questioning the mother's influence. So mother/family receiving money for allowing her son to be used as a guinea pig in a sacrifice, perhaps. Mom, Sue Klebold, ends up writing a book after the massacre. So she wrote that book about 10 years after the Columbine massacre. And that's dealing with that Neptune in the 3rd house. Letting it slip that he was Jewish. So towards the end of this whole situation, before the shooting began, Eric and Dylan, I think they were going to go shooting or something, or do some target practice. But then Dylan was like, I can't, I got to go to the Setter Mill. And that's how it slipped out that he's part Jewish again, even though they were very much Nazi sympathizers. So the Setter Mill is a Jewish ritual service and ceremonial dinner for the first night or first 2 nights of Passover. The interesting thing is, conspiracy theorists, they do point to this period of Passover in connection to some of these major events that have taken place over the years, such as mass shootings. A sacrifice has to be made during Passover. So a Passover sacrifice that takes place in a school, Neptune in the 3rd house rules schools. And again, this is just speculation. I'm not saying this is actually what's going on with the sacrifice and all that, but yeah. And this is Dylan's mother, Sue Klebold. And just when I look at her face, I'm not seeing a nice woman. And she does have Sun conjunct Mars in Aries. So I'm like, that's not a conjunction of a pacifist. Or if it is, if she really is a pacifist, that Sun conjunct Mars can cause her to be a fervent activist when it comes to trying to either ban guns or have laws that restrict the sale of, what are they called, the semi-automatic weapons and all that type of stuff. But yeah, she's a little suspect in my book. Here she is right here. She just looks like an evil witch, if you ask me. Now that Sun conjunct Mars conjunction in her chart also deals with Dylan, because he had all the guns and he shot up the school. But again, that Sun conjunct Mars also deals with who she is as well. And that's why I question whether she's truly a pacifist. Or again, if she is a pacifist, she could be one of those extremists. So she's made quite a bit of money over the years doing lectures and writing that book and all that. Here she is when Dylan was young. And she majored in psychology and she worked in the field of mental health, which is also suspect. So a little bit more about Sue Klebold. So born to Charlotte and Milton Rice Yasinoff in Columbus, Ohio, she was the granddaughter of philanthropist Leo Yasinoff, a prominent member of the Jewish community in Columbus, who left his multi-millionaire inheritance to charity organization. Columbus Jewish Community Center was named after him. So her grandfather was very prominent, a rich and prominent man. She later developed interest in working with people with mental disabilities and worked at a psychiatric hospital as a therapeutic arts teacher. In 1975, she earned a master's degree in educational services at Cardinal Stritch College in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. In 2009, Klebold wrote for Oprah Winfrey's O magazine, where she repeated that she had no idea that Dylan had been depressed and having suicidal thoughts. Well, I guess she wasn't that involved in her son's life if she didn't realize he was depressed. Columnist Mike Litwin criticized the essay in an opinion piece in the Denver Post. Litwin said that Klebold's account, while eloquent, revealed little about Dylan, his and Harris' victims, or the rest of the Klebold family. The reactions to her interview were mixed. Attorney General of Colorado, Cynthia Kaufman, said that Klebold's interview could inspire other would-be shooters and labeled her as irresponsible. So here's her chart right here. Here's that Sun-Mars conjunction that I speak of. Now, that deals with Dylan being a shooter, but it can also deal with some things that she's involved in as well. And also this aspect right here, Venus in Pisces, quincunx, that Libra South Node, that is an aspect of a secret agent. Secret agent. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's more to this story. So his North Node is conjoined to Arachne, and this can deal with being part of a network, a web of intrigue. South Node parallel Lilith. This can result in him being viewed as a pariah, but also where he could be restrained or limited in terms of his ability to be sexually liberated. So again, he might have been dealing with some thoughts about Eric, and maybe he couldn't outwardly express it. Black Moon Lilith contra parallel Cupido, attempting to suppress his desire for someone. Neptune opposition Phaethon. Fantasies of destruction, music and video games that center on destruction, being secretly taken out, perhaps. Sun conjunct Sappho. This is the gay rumors, and this can produce homosexual tendencies. Moon parallel Taureau, being drawn to violence, feeling that he has something to prove due to feelings of inadequacy when it comes to his manhood. Ascendant conjunct Vesta, a sense of isolation, sacrificing self for the cause. Mercury conjoined to the star Algorab. Scavenging, destructiveness, repulsiveness, malevolence, fiendishness, lying, suicide, greed, and injury. So he does have a star in his chart connected to his Mercury that does pertain to suicide. Mars parallel Persephone. This produces inner drive, reclusive tendencies, blindness or problems with the eyesight, murder, tragedy, fires, homosexuality, and it can manifest as a violent death. And it can cause one to be fortunate in business, but also liable to loss and disgrace. Saturn parallel Alnitak. This produces notoriety, which they did gain as a result of the mass shooting. Saturn conjunct Porrima, intrigue, scandal, feminine, and submissive. Saturn conjunct Vendamatrix. This can manifest as falsity, folly, disgrace, stealing, depression, witch hunts, mysticism, and the occult. Saturn conjunct Iena. This can manifest as craftiness, greed, ingenuity, patience, but also revengefulness, passion, selfishness, lying, aggression, and material instincts. Sometimes causes the native to become an agitator. Neptune conjunct Ras al-Hag. This is a star that produces trouble with women, perverted taste, drugs, poisoning, hallucination, medicines, infection, mystical healing. Neptune parallel Manubrium, blindness or problems with the eyesight, explosions, fire, heat, heroism, courage, defiance, high performance athletics, intellect, military strategy. And with Neptune being an aspect to Manubrium, this could be covert operations. Pluto conjunct Spica, wealth, fame, honor, a fortunate one. Pluto conjunct Unocal High. This can produce success followed by the fall. It's another star that can manifest as suicide, insanity, accidents, success in war, politics, writing, problems in love, forgery, loss. Chiron parallel Zarak. Melancholy, fear of death, and suicidal tendencies. So he has 3 stars in his chart connected to planets that deal with suicide. North Node conjunct Aludra. This can make one good-hearted, charitable, faithful, but also dangerous passions, danger from or fear of darkness and night, liability to dog bites. Ascendant conjunct Mufrid. This can manifest as prosperity from work, planning, strong desires, but also a tendency towards excess, a fondness for rural pursuits, occultism. Midheaven conjunct Ganesha, the weeping one it's known as. This also manifests as frivolity, fame through speaking, love of dogs, dog bites, death by drowning. Well, we know he didn't drown. Maybe he drowned in his own blood, though. Black Moon Lilith conjunct Ptolemy. Ptolemy is a star of occult and philosophical learning, which they probably gained through like reading about the Nazis, but also the video game Doom. Self-analysis, honors, beneficence, friends, refinement, high position, stubborn, cruel, stormy, or spoiled relationships with women, and a need for freedom. Black Moon Lilith conjunct Arabic part of love. This could be feeling unloved. Midheaven opposition, Arabic part of treachery. So Dylan's Black Moon was conjoined to the Arabic part of love, and this can deal with feeling unloved, especially when it came to him being able to connect with girls. Midheaven opposition, Arabic part of treachery, could pertain to mother being treacherous. Because again, I feel like the mother could be the missing link in this situation. But then also Eric's father, who was definitely military. Chiron opposition, Arabic part of organization. This is an aspect dealing with the trench coat mafia. Pluto conjunct Arabic part of brethren. Another aspect dealing with the trench coat mafia. So it says here, being mistaken for being a member of the trench coat mafia. Basically, they were saying that they really weren't a member, but then this quote tells otherwise. So it says, Harris' father erroneously stated that his son was a member of what they call the trench coat mafia in a 911 call he made on the day of the shooting. So how would he even know about the trench coat mafia? Because this was supposedly just a clique in school, unless Eric Harris, the son, told him about it, or he knew about it through his son. So again, this whole story is very sketchy. So before I get into Eric Harris's chart, I just want to read a little bit from Wikipedia about their personalities, how they met, and some of their school activities. Both Harris and Klebold worked together as cooks at a Blackjack Pizza, a mile south from Columbine High School. Harris was eventually promoted to shift leader. He and his group of friends were interested in computers and were enrolled in a bowling class. Some describe Harris as charismatic, and others described him as nice and likable. Harris also bragged about his ability to deceive others, once stating in a tape that he could make anyone believe anything. By his junior year, Harris was also known to be quick to anger and threaten people with bombs. Classmates also related that Harris was fascinated by war and wrote out violent fantasies about killing people he did not like. Klebold was described by his peers and adults as painfully shy. That's coming from that Capricorn South Node. Klebold often was fidgety whenever someone new talked to him, rarely opening up to people. Klebold was also exceptionally nervous in front of the opposite sex, sometimes avoiding a confrontation with girls altogether. In the last year of his life, many noted a change in Klebold's behavior. Unlike before, Klebold became short-tempered, often prone to sudden outbursts of anger. That's that Mars sesqui square Neptune in his chart. Friendship. Much of the information on Harris and Klebold's friendship is unknown. On their interactions and conversations, aside from the basement tapes, of which only transcripts have been released, Aside from a short audio clip recorded surreptitiously by a victim's father, the pair claimed they were going to make copies of the tapes to send to news stations, but never did so. Harris and Klebold met at King Carroll Middle School during their 7th grade year. Over time, they became increasingly close, hanging out by often going out bowling, carpooling, and playing the video game Doom over a private server connected to their personal computers. By their junior year of high school, the boys were described as inseparable. Chad Laughlin, a close friend of Harris and Klebold, said that they always sat alone together at lunch and often kept to themselves. A rumor eventually started that Harris and Klebold were gay and romantically involved due to the time the pair spent together. It is unknown if they were aware of this rumor. Judy Brown believed Harris was more emotionally dependent on Klebold, who was more liked by the broader student population. In his journals, however, Klebold wrote that he felt that he was not accepted or loved by anyone. Due to these feelings, Klebold possibly sought validation from Harris. Klebold's mother believes Harris' rage, intermingled with Klebold's self-destructive personality, caused the boys to feed off of each other and enter what eventually became an unhealthy friendship. Columbine High School. At Columbine High School, Harris and Klebold were active in school play productions, operated video productions, and became computer assistants, maintaining the school's computer server. According to early accounts of the shooting, they were very unpopular students and targets of bullying. While sources do support accounts of bullying specifically directed towards Harris and Klebold, accounts of them being outcasts have been reported to be false, since both of them had a close-knit group of friends. Harris and Klebold were initially reported to be members of a clique that was called the Trenchcoat Mafia, despite later confirmation that the pair had no connection to the group, and furthermore, did not appear in the group's photo in Columbine High's 1998 yearbook. Harris's father erroneously stated that his son was a member of what they call the Trenchcoat Mafia in a 911 call he made on the day of the shooting. Klebold attended the high school prom 3 days before the shootings with a classmate named Robin Anderson. Harris and Klebold linked their personal computers on a network and played video games over the internet. Harris created a set of levels for the game Doom, which later became known as the Harris levels. The levels are downloadable over the internet through Doom's WADS. Harris had a web presence under the handle REB, short for Rebel, a nod to the nickname of Columbine High sports teams, and other online aliases including Rebelmaker, Reb Doomer, and Rebdamine. Klebold went by the names Vodka and Vodka, seemingly inspired by the alcoholic drink. Harris had various websites that hosted Doom and Quake files, as well as team information for those whom he gamed online. The sites openly espoused hatred for people in their neighborhood and the world in general. When the pair began experimenting with pipe bombs, they posted results of the explosions on the websites. The website was shut down by America Online after the shootings and was preserved for the FBI. All right, let's get into Eric Harris. So Eric David Harris was born on April 9th, 1981 in Wichita, Kansas. Harris's parents were both born and raised in Colorado. His mother, Catherine Ann Poole, was a homemaker. His father, Wayne Harris, was working in the United States Air Force as a transport pilot. In 1983, the family moved to Dayton, Ohio, where Harris was 2 years old. 6 years later, the family relocated to Oscoda, Michigan. Michigan pastor William Stone lived across the street from the Harris family while they were located in Oscoda. Stone recalled them as great neighbors and often saw Wayne very engaged with his sons. The Harris family then moved to Plattsburgh, New York in 1991. During this time at Stafford Middle School, Harris played Little League Baseball, regularly went to birthday parties, and was part of the crowd. Kyle Ross, a former classmate of Harris, said he was just a typical kid. The Harris family finally settled back in Littleton, Colorado, the next year when Wayne retired from the military. On a 1997 English class assignment, Harris wrote about how difficult the move was from New York to Colorado. It was the hardest moving from Plattsburgh. I have the most memories from there. Harris continued. When I left, I felt alone, lost, and even agitated that I had spent so much time with them, and now I have to go because of something I can't stop. Harris, in a basement tape, blamed his father for moving the family around, forcing Harris to start out at the bottom of the ladder. Harris had a chest deformity known as pectus excavatum, in which the breastbone sinks into the chest. This made Harris reluctant to take his shirt off in gym class, as other students ridicule him. Harris had 2 cosmetic surgeries at age 12 and 13 to repair the deformity. The sunken chest was still mildly observable during his autopsy. The Harris family lived in rented accommodations for the first 3 years that they lived in Littleton area. While Harris was in the 7th grade, he met Klebold. In 1996, the Harris family purchased and settled at a house south of Columbine High School. Harris's older brother, Kevin, attended college at the University of Colorado. Harris's father took a job with Flight Safety Services Corporation, and Harris' mother, a former homemaker, became a caterer. Harris entered Columbine High School in 1995 as a freshman. Columbine had just gone through a major renovation and expansion. From all accounts, he had many friends and was left forward in midfield on the Columbine soccer team for his freshman and sophomore year. According to one of his teammates, Josh Swanson, he said Harris was a solid soccer player who enjoyed the sport a lot. During his freshman year, Harris met Tiffany Teifer. They had German class together. Teifer later recounted that Harris quickly wooed her. Harris asked her to homecoming and she accepted. After the event, it appeared that Teifer was no longer interested in seeing Harris anymore, for reasons never disclosed. When Teifer refused to socialize with Harris again, Harris staged a fake suicide, sprawling on the ground with fake blood splashed all over him. When Teifer saw him on the ground, she began to scream for help, at which point Harris and his friends began laughing, prompting Teifer to storm off, shouting at Harris to get psychological help. All right, so let's get into Eric's chart. So starting with his numerology. So Eric is a 9 in terms of birth number. And that 9 energy just augments the Aries traits, including the potential for violence. It can also make him egotistical, selfish, impulsive, aggressive, angry, reckless, and both Aries and 9 deal with guns, and he was a gun enthusiast. His life path number 32 breaks down to 5. That deals with communications as well as the media. And Eric wanted to send some tapes to a news station prior to the school massacre. School and long distance relocations. The long distance relocations come in through being a military brat. So here's his chart right here. As you can see, he has a wicked Aries stellium. Those planets are very close to each other. Venus and the sun both at the 20th degree. That Mars at the 18th degree. And you know what I say about 18? That's a murderous degree. And it produces a conflict between the material and spiritual side of life. Mercury and Aries. That one symbol is Eris. And Eris deals with having like a driving force, or where, you know, you almost like unstoppable, and where you basically have a strong determination. Moon in Cancer, North Node in Leo, South Node in Aquarius, Jupiter conjoined to Saturn in Libra, Pluto in Libra, Uranus at the 29th degree of Scorpio, Neptune in Sagittarius. So his Mars, Sun, and Venus in Aries is forming a trine with Neptune and Sagittarius. This explains why he was a good athlete, but also his ability to get guns in a clandestine manner. Also, the videos of Eric and Dylan shooting guns. Music fueled his anger and desire for destruction. Also, causing a sensation and fascination by some. Ease in getting what he wants, including drugs and alcohol. Also, his claims that he could get people to believe his lies. And he's probably telling the truth with those trines. Mars, Sun, and Venus opposition Pluto in Libra. So this is dealing with the target practice and sniper training. And also where he had a me against them approach to life, he was very much antisocial. He hated people. Also, people are either enemies or pawns with this opposition. A sense of looming doom played by the game Doom. So again, when you got this opposition with Pluto, that could deal with a threat, or where you just sense doom, or where you're very much into creating that sense of doom. And he was playing the video game Doom. A dark corridor of murder and mayhem. I always talk about some oppositions being dark corridors where the person is basically trapped. There's no way out. So this is a mass murder aspect. Basically, it's basically like search and destroy missions. Being hated, in his case, post-mortem after he died, a lot of people hated both him and Dylan for what he did. Being under the control of a secret agent, perhaps. Pluto is ruling the 12th house. So this is something that you got to take into account, because oppositions more than likely is going to deal with other people. And with Pluto, that could be some dark operation. And with it ruling the 12th, it could be secret. And the agent part comes in with the Libra. And they could be seen as agent provocateurs, again, with the purpose of gun laws being tightened or made more stricter. Making the ultimate sacrifice with Pluto ruling the 12th through the fulfillment of a mission, feeling that there is no way out, leading to suicide. T-square nightmare involving Mercury, Moon, Jupiter, and Saturn. So Mercury square Moon, this is a really challenging aspect for anybody, and it can deal with where one's feelings and emotions override their logic and rationality, and it was certainly happening in Eric's case. Conflicts with communicating with mother, racist tendencies, and he was very much into Hitler, missing a lot of school. Could be a mind programming aspect with the Moon being intercepted in the 8th house, Mercury ruling the 10th, and that could deal with the government influence. Absorbing scenes of death desensitizes him, triggers the killer instinct in him. So again, mainly like playing the video game Doom, but he probably was watching, certain videos of death and destruction on the internet as well. Being born into a family of provocateurs, perhaps. Not saying that's definite, but perhaps. Because again, these stories, you really need to question the official narrative when they're high profile like this. Mercury opposition Jupiter and Saturn. So this is basically dealing with his father's involvement in the military, and perhaps where Eric could have been used as part of a military exercise. Jupiter and Saturn are in the 10th house. 10th house is government. This is basically sniper training. Again, like the other opposition, this is me against the world mindset. Dark politically themed music sets the tone for violence. Moon squared Jupiter and Saturn. Government interference in family, perhaps. Having to move a lot due to being a military brat. Can experience extreme highs and lows in terms of his mood and temperament. Being taken out of the home for exercises, perhaps. And this is definitely dealing with the deformity of his chest. So he had pectus excavatum, which was like his chest was like hollowed out or indented on one side. Also, this square in particular, Moon square Jupiter and Saturn, it can make it where he does have antisocial personality disorder. Mercury trine Uranus and ascendant in Scorpio, befriending Dylan, who would become a co-conspirator. Represents his participation in online forums, also how him and Dylan, they were like in charge of the computer department or whatever in school, so that could deal with that as well. South Node at 7 degrees Aquarius, trine Jupiter and Saturn in Libra. Ease in making friends, wasn't really the outcast like they tried to claim at first. Being part of a government experiment, perhaps, with that South Node in Aquarius being the experiment, and then Jupiter conjunct Saturn in Libra, that's the government's influence. And remember, Jupiter and Saturn are in the 10th house. Being a patsy or a pawn, perhaps. attracting a following as a result of what they did. So he has Mercury contraparallel Amor, and this could deal with his high school romance that didn't work out and how it triggered a violent response from him. So basically, when the girl broke up with him, he sprawled himself out on the grass and covered himself up with paint, making it look like he killed himself over her. And she he freaked her out. That's just showing that he was already mentally unhinged by doing something like that, but could also pertain to his love of guns due to his father's influence, with Mercury ruling the fourth house, Mercury being in the fourth house, my bad. Saturn opposition Amor, had a hard time handling the breakup, so he pulls a stunt where he is covered in red paint that looks like blood, but can also deal with his love of guns due to his father's influence. Ascendant opposition Arachne. This is a trench coat mafia aspect. Now, Arachne can deal with being part of a network, could also pertain to his identity on the server for the Doom game. Pluto conjunct Atlantis. This is where that doom comes in again, because Atlantis can produce a sense of impending doom. Midheaven conjunct Cassandra. This can be him seeing a counselor. And I think he was seeing a counselor after they relocated to Colorado. Sun, Venus, and Mars conjunct Niobe. Niobe can deal with tragedy involving children. So this is dealing with him shooting some of the children. Moon opposition Pandora. This makes me think that he could have very well been part of a military exercise with Pandora being in Capricorn. South Node parallel Taureau. Taureau deals with machismo and aggression, fighting, violence. So this makes him prone to displays of violence directed at others. And it's at the 0 degree of Libra. So that makes me wonder, because a lot of times when you see that Aries point of a cardinal sign, it means that there's some outside influence taking place. Moon opposition Urania. This could be indication of specialized military knowledge. Mercury conjunct Follis could pertain to bomb-making materials, because Follis can deal with explosions or like explosive situations. Also explosive anger that is hard to contain. Jupiter opposition Follis, having knowledge of making explosives. Moon conjunct Propus. That's a star that can manifest as overconfidence, pride, shamelessness, violence, imminence, and manifest intelligence. The moon is running parallel to Zosma. One thing about Eric, he had a ton of fixed stars connected to planets and points in his chart. It was exhausting seeing all this. Moon parallels Zosma, keen intellect, depression, fearful, unhappy, feels restricted, lost in childhood, egotism, prophetic ability. Sun and Venus conjunct Baptin Chaotis, isolation, depression, accidents. Sun and Venus parallel Tabit, strong, dignified, self-confidence, inconstancy, arrogance, violence, impiety, danger of treachery, and poison. Jupiter conjunct Zenaya, Saturn parallels Zenaya. Zenaya manifests as order, congeniality, lovable nature, refinement, honor, money, love, adultery, prostitution. Of course, all of this doesn't apply to him, though. Uranus conjunct Ptolemy. Occult and philosophical learning, self-analysis, honors, beneficence, friends, refinement, high position, stubborn, cruel, stormy, or spoiled relationships with women. So that points to that situation where he freaked that girl out. Need for freedom. She probably saw craziness in him, was like, I don't want to deal with this dude. Uranus parallel a crowd. Riches, materialism, power, honor, transitory wealth. Now, this is what really applies to him. Malevolence, mercilessness, mercilessness, fiendishness, repulsiveness, malice, theft, crime, pestilence, contagious diseases. Neptune conjoined to Shala, danger, desperation, immorality, malevolence, acid, poisons, victory in sieges, destruction of seafarers and captives. That part don't apply. Exorcism, mesmerism, spiritual pressure towards enlightenment. You got even more. Neptune conjunct Apuleius, morbid outlook on life, but it can produce a sharp mind as well. Religious extremism, poison of sting. Pluto parallel Betelgeuse, great fortune and fame, especially military success. That's a clue right there, but also associated with calamities, danger, and violence. Pluto conjunct Spica, wealth, fame, honor, glamour, the fortunate one, or you could say the chosen one. Pluto conjunct Arcturus, inspiration, riches, fame, honor, popularity, benefits through travel, success through work. Chiron parallel to Nebula, criticism, perseverance, control, lack of imagination, honors, undesirable associates, mental illness, happiness turns to despair, natural disasters, catastrophes. North Node conjunct Persepi. This produces inner drive, reclusiveness, blindness, murder, tragedy, fires, homosexuality, violent death. North Node conjunct Asellus Borealis, patience, beneficence, and courage, heroic and defiant leader. That's probably him like worshiping Hitler, basically. North Node parallel Mufrid, planning, strong desires, a tendency to excess. Black Moon conjoined to Acrux, interest in astrology, spirituality, metaphysics, sacrifice. Black Moon conjunct Alphecca, poetic, scandals, betrayal in love, sorrow through children. Black Moon conjunct Mencken, wisdom, astronomy, divination, medicine, botany, and music. Midheaven conjunct Arabic part of fortune. This is bringing the military back in there. Perhaps, not saying it's definite. Ascendant conjunct Arabic part of love, his love of bombs and explosives because his ascendant is in Scorpio. Scorpio rules bombs and explosives. Forbidden love, perhaps. So that could have pertained to Dylan, perhaps. But then again, it can also deal with that situation with the girl, again, where he acted like he was dead. So he also has Black Moon, Lilith, opposition, Arabic part of fatality. Perhaps with this, he was programmed to kill others and then himself. Black Moon, opposition, Arabic part of discord. Being programmed to create discord can also point to discordant music that had an effect on him. Uranus, opposition, Arabic part of organization. Friend, accomplice, Dylan is sought after by an organization, perhaps, with Uranus representing friends. Being used as an experiment by an organization, perhaps. Ascendant conjunct Arabic part of bondage, not operating of his own free will or being in sexual bondage, perhaps. South Node conjoined to Arabic part of the mother. So there's something up with the mother in terms of his issues. His South Node is in Aquarius. So I'm wondering if the mother was connected, or at least where she agreed for him to be part of this experiment with that Aquarius ruling experiments. Sun and Venus conjunct Arabic part of merchandise. The girl and possibly others who helped them to get the guns, his stockpile of guns. Mars, Sun, and Venus conjunct Arabic part of honorable acquaintance. He may have someone who was famous, or he may have met someone who was famous, or a VIP, might have been a top military general or something. Now, like I said before, when it comes to these high-profile mass murders, you have to question the official narrative. Now, I've been following this website for years now. I don't go on it much anymore, but it's chock full of information dealing with various events in history, conspiracy theories and stuff like this. So I found this little tidbit of information on this website, mindcontrolblackassassins.com. So here's Eric Harris right here. He was quoted as saying, "I love the Nazis, mass murder, Dark Knight, Eric Harris." Dark Knight, he's basically pointing to these psyops. Remember the one guy that shot up the movie theater during the Dark Knight? Basically, that's another pre-orchestrated mass murder situation. Allegedly. Eric Harris had deep military intelligence connections from birth. Eric's father, Wayne Harris, was some type of military intelligence spook and pilot at Plattsburgh AFB in Plattsburgh, New York, that closed in 1995. Legend says that Plattsburgh Air Force Base also had secret underground bases. Many believe that Eric was MK Ultra at Plattsburgh. During the 1950s, Littleton was America's pre-named a real space city. It was the site of the nation's first intercontinental ballistic missile factory that must have employed a third of the population of Littleton, Colorado. Anonymous said, the Denver police refused to release his 1999 mugshot, saying Wisconsin cops and FBI asked them not to. Perhaps it is because the pic will show Page with short, spiky black hair with blonde tips. The same description as the missing 7th older, mid-20s to 30, Page at the time. Columbine shooter identified 40-plus people in public court docs. Page had close ties to both the Trenchcoat Mafia and Western Hammer Skins. So basically, Page is allegedly the third shooter that people had identified on the roof, I believe. We know that Page was in Littleton, Colorado in 1999. He was given a traffic violation ticket in 1999 by law enforcement in Littleton for driving without a valid license. He pleaded guilty to the charge. We also know that in 2000, with no known source of income, Page suddenly left Littleton on a cross-country trip visiting friends and attending festivals in Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, West Virginia, and California. On April 20th, 1999, Hitler's 110th birthday, Columbine High School students Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold above were part of a mass murder killing spree in which left a body count of 12 students and 1 teacher dead and 21 injured and maimed. CHS is located at 6201 South Pierce Street, Littleton, Colorado. Page was at 5529 South Widmer Street, apartment 23 in Littleton, about 4.8 miles away from Columbine High School. 4.63 miles away from Blackjack Pizza at 6657 West Ottawa, and about 6.33 miles from Eric's home at 8276 South Reed Street. So Blackjack Pizza was the place that Eric and Dylan worked at. Both Harris and Klebold had been heavily sheep-dipped in National Socialism and the Satanism by psych ops operative like Wade Michael Page. Contrary to managed perceptions that Harris and Klebold were lonely, frustrated, and bully geeks, they were part of a larger, powerful group of long black-coated Luciferian goths called the Trenchcoat Mafia. The Trenchcoat Mafia often met at Blackjack Pizza, where both Harris and Klebold worked. They bought and exchanged weapons and experimented with pipe bomb explosives at Blackjack Pizza. In fact, one of their Trenchcoat Mafia co-employees, Chris Morris, was arrested and is implicated in the Columbine High School massacre. They were into industrial and punk rock, 9 Inch Nails, etc., that has its roots in such groups as the Robin Gristle, Satanist Nazi-influenced Genesis Porridge. According to law enforcement, the Trenchcoat Mafia were goths, a small sect and loose-knit group that ranges in age from teens to people in their 40s. The scene draws from satanic worship in medieval Europe. The Columbine High School Trenchcoat Mafia also had U.S. intelligence ties. Psychologist Dwayne Fusilier was the head of the FBI Columbine investigation. Fusilier's son, Scott, had been a member of the Columbine High School Trenchcoat Mafia with Harris and Klebold. In 1997, Scott Fusilier was one of the students who produced a videotape more than 2 years ago that shows trenchcoat wearing students armed with weapons moving through the school's halls. The film ends with 4 students walking away from the school as it explodes in flames. Eric Harris idolized and worshiped Adolf Hitler. Eric had a demonstrated abnormal fascination and obsession with the Nazis. At Columbine High School, he often made references to Hitler, Himmler, swastikas, Iron Cross, and the SS. Eric also happened to be obsessed and preoccupied with SS Knights of the Black Sun Goodfellow mass murder cult. In the fall of his senior year, Eric wrote a research paper on the Nazis. One of the themes he focused on was the Nazi goal of eliminating people who were deemed unfit for life. In his paper, Eric wrote about the euthanasia program that led to the killing of approximately 100,000 lives that were not worth living. He also wrote, in Nazi Germany, all mentally disabled people or incurable mental defectives were killed. In addition, arithmetic was used to show how wasteful the mentally challenged were and how much money could be saved by euthanasia. Like the DC snipers, ducks caught in a noose, Trigger, Dark Knights Harris, and Klebold laid down and self-terminated or fell unconscious in a deep sleep, then terminated by special forces. On June 20th, 1999, a clandestine assassination team was also on ground at Columbine High School during the killing. Brian Rahbinah and several other Columbine families accused law enforcement of lying about what really happened at Columbine High School during the April 20th, 1999 massacre. According to Rahbinah, his son Danny's autopsy showed that he was killed by a bullet that was fired from the front in an upward trajectory. What in front of Danny Rahbinah? Law enforcement shell casings. Rahbinah's attorney, Barry Arrington, said. The Rahbinah said that the ballistics map showed that there were no shell casings from Harris or Klebold in the area where the shot was fired that killed Danny and up to 6 other students. Perception management. Actions to convey and or deny selected information and indicators to audiences to influence their emotions, motives, and objective reasoning, ultimately resulting in behaviors and official actions favorable to the originator's objectives. U.S. Department of Defense. PSYOPs, NATO, NSA, CIA, FBI was also on ground and in effect at Columbine High School. A grand jury said law enforcement authorities withheld a document showing Jefferson County Sheriff deputies knew one of the Columbine High School gunmen had been accused 2 years earlier in 1997 of making death threats and building pipe bombs. The grand jury said it didn't hand up any indictments because of all the witnesses claimed to know nothing about the missing sheriff's records. The records involved a draft search warrant for Eric Harris' house a year before the attack. The grand jury report said the draft search warrant affidavit, never submitted to a judge, was the subject of a private meeting of high-ranking Jefferson County officials and law enforcement officials, called a few days after the attack to discuss the document and its potential liabilities and what information would be conveyed and withheld from the public. As a result of that meeting, the sheriff's office decided against discussing the search warrant's affidavit on an April 30th, 1999 news conference. A 1999 report was also discovered conveniently tucked inside a sheriff's department binder that dealt with a website where Eric Harris referred to Ground Zero, and boasted that he and Klebold had built pipe bombs. The report was also never investigated, pursued, and deliberately suppressed at the April 30th, 1999 news conference. An attorney general's investigation revealed that the files of sheriff's investigator Michael Guerra, who wrote the proposed request for a search warrant, were missing and never found. The grand jury said all the witnesses it heard from denied knowing what happened to Guerra's life. Some computer files in the case have also been purged, some of them the summer after the attack, and other documents related to Columbine High School were deliberately shredded too. The shooting resulted in calls for more gun control measures. That was part of the purpose. In 2000, federal and state legislation was introduced that would require safety locks on firearms, as well as ban the importation of high-capacity ammunition magazines. Though laws were passed that made it a crime to buy guns for criminals and minors, there was considerable controversy over legislation pertaining to background checks at gun shows. There was concern amongst the gun lobby over future restrictions on Second Amendment rights in the U.S. In 2001, Kmart, which sold ammunition to shooters, announced it would no longer sell handgun ammunition, action encouraged by and documented in Michael Moore film Bowling for Columbine. That's psyops. So it says, after the Columbine High School massacre, the senseless slaughter and maiming of his fellow innocent human beings, Wade Michael Page and his many faces is off to see the wizard. So this Michael Page sounds like he gets around, like he's connected to more than this Columbine event. But yeah, I just wanted to read that part just to show that information has been out there about, this being a conspiracy by government officials. Okay, let's get into this synastry. Dylan's chart is on the inside. Eric's chart is on the outside. All right, so let's talk about their conjunctions first, because the conjunctions are basically showing where shared interests, they're both on board, both on the same page. So Eric's Jupiter and Saturn conjunct Dylan's Saturn in Libra. Same taste in music, industrial metal with the Saturn influence, dark music that focuses on enmities. Eric greatly influencing Dylan's decision-making, sharing knowledge of sniper tactics. Again, Libra being the sniper. Both becoming fully immersed in the Doom video game covert sniper training, which could have took place via playing the Doom video game. So this conjunction is in Dylan's 12th house, and that 12th house is pointing to the video games. Also, the government agent connection. So agent is ruled by Libra, and with the Saturn influence, could very well deal with government agents. Eric's father's influence, perhaps, and we know that Eric's father was military. And a lot of these shooters do have military backgrounds. Eric's Pluto conjoined to Dylan's ascendant, Venus, and Pluto. So this basically exacerbates the potential for hatred, manipulation, death, murder, and mayhem that Dylan was already dealing with. Dying together could be indicative of a sexual relationship or sexual tension due to Eric's provocations, perhaps. And these two could be agent provocateurs, again, with the purpose of toughening gun laws. Sniper theme intensified due to Libra influence. Here's a picture of Dylan and Eric after they allegedly committed suicide. I know this might be a little bit gruesome and graphic for some, so I only have it in one of the slides. So Eric's ascendant conjoined to Dylan's Uranus, very close, inseparable as friends. Sexual relationship or sexual tension reinforced, and could also have been a little sexual experimentation. Eric being drawn to Dylan. Their ability to gain access to computer room for the Doom game. Being unified in terms of taboos, death with Scorpio influence. Eric's midheaven conjoined to Dylan's sun in Virgo. Eric finds a servant / subject in Dylan. Also, this points to their daily interaction, but also the training that they underwent and working together at the pizza place. So they both worked at Blackjack Pizza. Eric's North Node could join to Dylan's Mars and Leo. So they both gain confidence and strength through their friendship. Unwavering loyalty. Eric strengthened Dylan's ego. Could also have been romantic attraction or a romantic affair between the two of them. And again, it was rumored, but some rumors aren't true. But there are some aspects that could point to that. Dylan's 10th house, government, Dylan's mother, but also working together. So this conjunction is taking place in Dylan's 10th house. So the theme of working together resurfaces. But this can also point to Dylan's mother's involvement. Eric's Uranus conjoined to Dylan's Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio. Eric brings out Dylan's dark side, which is to be hateful and murderous. This conjunction produces magnetic attraction, with Eric being the magnet. Eric shares his interest in bombs with Dylan. Sexual experimentation, perhaps. Experiment theory reinforced. Basically, again, that this could have been an experiment to see if they could cause people to rally for gun control measures, but also about psychiatric drugs and people who are very impressionable. Also, this could play out as a death pact. Eric's Mars, Sun, and Venus in Aries opposition Dylan's Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Pluto, and Ascendant in Libra. Some hardcore oppositions. This basically shows that Eric was the dominant one of the two and that Dylan was receptive to his commands. And in the FBI report, they did mention that Eric was the mastermind and Dylan was the follower. So these oppositions point to that. Eric's influence over Dylan's decision-making and school performance, grades start falling, cutting school. Also, this is about opposites attract. Eric being the warmonger versus Dylan being the pacifist. And I say pacifist because he's coming from a family of pacifists, supposedly. And that's that Libra end. Dylan being targeted and recruited by Eric, and this could have been via his father, perhaps, to help him carry out the attack. Dylan really wasn't about that life, but he wanted a relationship with Eric badly, so he went along to get along. Eric may have pointed guns at Dylan to see his reaction. Eric's Mercury and Aries opposition Dylan, Saturn, and Libra. Eric pulls Dylan in, satisfying Dylan's need for a partner. Dylan was more of a strategist and more level-headed. He was probably the better Dune player. A distinct imbalance in the friendship with Eric being the dominant one. Also representative of Dylan's hesitance at times, despite Eric's goading. Eric's ascendant opposition Dylan's Chiron. Eric could treat Dylan in a degrading manner at times. Dylan's values are compromised as a result of Eric's influence. Eric's sex appeal triggered the self-esteem issues that Chiron and Taurus produces. Eric's use of explosives could have been too much for Dylan at times, being disturbed. This opposition involving Scorpio and Taurus is basically noise pollution. Dylan was not at peace when dealing with Eric due to his turbulent emotions, with Eric being a Scorpio rising. Eric's Jupiter and Saturn trying Dylan's South Node. Eric benefits from Dylan's unwavering loyalty. Eric fulfills Dylan's need for a militaristic approach to life. Eric sympathized with Dylan's bitterness, loneliness, and misanthropy. The government connection, especially with respect to Eric's father. Jupiter rules Eric's 4th house. That's his father. Pisces on the 4th with Jupiter and Libra in the 10th. That could be Secret Agent Man. You ever hear that song? Secret Agent Man. Eric's Uranus is Scorpio and ascended trine Dylan's North Node in midheaven in Cancer. A very close friendship that fulfills Dylan's need for unconditional love and acceptance. Could be representative of Dylan's mother's involvement, because Dylan's midheaven is involved, and the resulting connection with Eric. Remember, mom is an activist. And Dylan's moon is in Aquarius, representing his mom being an activist. And then Sue, his mother, her moon is in Aquarius as well. Eric's moon trine Dylan's Venus. So this produces a positive relationship, and it's a dissociative aspect because Dylan's Venus is in the late degrees of Libra. Eric's moon is in Cancer, but this could show that they were like really close, always over maybe Eric's house in this situation. And basically where Dylan was very receptive to Eric, and Eric's needs were being fulfilled through this friendship he had with Dylan. Eric's Mercury trine Dylan's North Node. So this made it easy for the two of them to connect. And basically with this, especially because Dylan's North Node is in Cancer, this made Dylan feel accepted, made him feel a sense of closeness and family. Eric's Mercury and Aries trine Dylan's Mars and Leo. This produces a lot of excitement, a lot of fun, never any chance to get bored or whatever. They were like getting into trouble together. And also, this basically shows that Dylan was willing to do whatever Eric said most of the time. Eric's Mars and Aries sextile Dylan's moon in Aquarius. This produces an instant connection, instant rapport, a friendship where there's benefits. Eric's North Node sextile Dylan Saturn. Dylan allows Eric to take the lead. Eric finding a fellow Doom gamer in Dylan could be indicative of a connection between Eric's father and Dylan's father. Eric's Chiron trine Dylan's son. Dylan is Eric's willing servant, being very subservient to Eric's programming. Eric's Venus in Aries trine Dylan's Neptune in Sagittarius. So this is where they have a very close relationship, with Dylan being very devoted to Eric and helping Eric carry out his plans. Eric's Jupiter and Saturn in Libra sextile Dylan's Mars and Leo. Eric's willingness to spend a lot of time with Dylan boosted his ego and confidence. Eric's all-in and devoted approach to partnerships caused Dylan to feel loved and desired and more confident. Eric was more so a tease, which is my thinking, but that was enough to appease Dylan on a romantic level, perhaps. Could represent the government ties between Eric's father and Dylan's mother. Eric's moon in Cancer squared Dylan's Saturn in Libra. This reinforces the square in Eric's natal chart. There could have been times when Dylan would not give in to Eric's emotional maelstroms. Could represent times when Eric would throw Dylan off with his shifting moods. Dylan may have tried to stop Eric from acting out emotionally at times. Dylan could feel inadequate when it came to Eric's ability to get girls. Eric not respecting Dylan's right for some alone time. Eric's Mars, Sun, and Venus square Dylan's midheaven. Eric attacking Dylan's race with his midheaven being in Cancer, or, ethnicity with the Jewish background. Dylan's self-preservation is lacking when around Eric. Eric probably didn't like Dylan's mother, and she probably couldn't stand him. Eric was hard to contain. He could have had a problem with keeping shit under wraps. And again, if the mother was involved, she was probably thinking to herself, he's going to screw this whole plan up. Eric's Neptune square Dylan's Sun compounds the energy of Dylan's natal square. Eric was able to weaken Dylan's willpower and sense of individuation. Dylan going down the wrong path due to Eric's influence. Dylan may have been embarrassed or humiliated by Eric at times. Eric getting Dylan high and drunk. Eric not letting Dylan in on certain details. And this could be seen as compartmentalization, where Eric knows more about this secret program, or where he is aware that there's more going on than what is being portrayed. My bad. I did put this in here more than once. So Eric's Pluto squaring Dylan's nodes in midheaven compounds the squares in Dylan's own chart. Eric's influence triggers Dylan's devilish ways and activates hard lessons in self-preservation, subversive tactics, but not of Eric's own doing. Eric's Pluto could represent the agents, Pluto and Libra, that were really in control, same with Dylan's own Pluto. Eric's sun, Mars, and Venus opposition Pluto and Libra. Father influence as a secret agent resurfaces with Pluto ruling the 12th house in Eric's chart. The government theme resurfaces via the Capricorn South Node in Dylan's chart, 29th degree, that can manifest as interference from third parties. That Pluto in Libra is the epitome of like an FBI agent too. So the day of the massacre, this is a scene from the shooting. Here are the shooting victims. Okay, here are some of the main transits that was taking place in both Dylan and Eric's chart on the day of the Columbine High School massacre. So let's start with Dylan's chart. So the transiting South Node was in Aquarius and was forming a quincunx with his sun, both at the 18th degree. That 18, like I always say, is a murderous degree. So this is making me think that a group is interfering with the plan, and basically the group takes over. And it was reported by several people that there was more than 2 shooters that day. Unexpected circumstances that could, mess up the plan. So for instance, the bombs that they put in the cafeteria did not go off as they had planned, or maybe the whole thing was never to make those bombs go off. The plan goes out the window. Extreme nervousness that Dylan was experiencing that day could have been trying to back out of it. A major disruption in his routine. Transiting Uranus was right on his moon, 16th degree, and that 16 can play out as catastrophe, loss, sacrifice, sorrow. So this is taken from my book as the rest of the entries. So I'm currently writing a book on transits, and I will have it finished this year. The rough draft, that is. It might take me a whole nother year to edit it and send it to an editor and do all that other stuff. But I am getting very close to the finish line. So here's what I put in. Here's some of what is in my book about this transit. Liberation. Now, in Dylan's case, he did want to commit suicide. So, leaving your body, that's the ultimate form of liberation. A period of instability and upheaval, an emotionally upsetting situation, becoming more independent, an act of rebellion, joining a group, club, or network that is compatible with your personality. Now, in this case, again, this is just showing that this could have been a group of people. Like, he was basically operating within a group of people, with Uranus representing groups, especially with the Aquarius theme. Engaging in shocking or surprising behavior, chaotic conditions, and uprising. And like in that article that I read from Mind Control Black Assassin website, it was saying that they were part of the trench coat mafia, which included people that weren't even attending the school, people up to the age of 40. So that's quite interesting. Supporting a cause that has personal meaning, an upset within the family, displaying personal magnetism, a house guest, maybe it was that guy Page, opening your home to a friend in need, being very willing or compromising, a disruption, doing the unexpected, a significant change involving mom, property damage, remodeling or renovating a home, all that part don't count. All right. Transiting Saturn squaring his Mars. So this is like where he was probably stopped at some point from doing any further shooting. And again, it could have been some person that's in charge. So a need to be more conservative or conscientious. This can also make you feel like the walls are closing in on you. Taking on a new responsibility, a need to slow down, getting a dose of realism, the need for a practical approach, being saddled with a responsibility, in this case, having to shoot up a school, a need to take your time in order to avoid mistakes, having to do things the long and hard way, being severely inconvenienced, a necessary delay, receiving a negative evaluation, being barred from entry, a corrective action is administered, being pulled up regarding a responsibility, being held solely responsible, a process or system comes to a halt, Issues with a mechanical device, like the bombs not going off, feeling sluggish, inertia, rigidity, not gaining admittance, feeling weighed down. And he probably did feel weighed down carrying those rifles and guns and all that. And carrying the bombs and all that. Being overworked, being squeezed tightly, being overly concerned with the material constriction, restriction. Transiting Mars was squaring his Mars. This is another aspect that's like a fallback aspect or transit. That's why it's interesting that he had this transit going on that day, because it's like somebody else is taking over and he has to fall back. Being self-contained, self-absorption, the need to wait until further notice, acting on instinct, being stuck in a quandary, being plagued with a nagging feeling, seeing a need to withdraw your participation, being dismissed, an attempt to, and it could have been dismissed, popping a bullet in his head, an attempt to raise your threshold or tolerance with respect to fitness or athletics, hitting a plateau, problems with a male or a group of men, being left out of the loop, a need to delay gratification, being apprehensive regarding taking action. Something doesn't feel right, a need to pay close attention to your instincts, experiencing a dull nagging pain, not paying attention to what is occurring around you can result in being a victim of your circumstances, taking a foolish risk, being unproductive, wasted energy, being thwarted by an outside force, not wanting to put yourself out there, being inattentive can lead to disaster, yielding to a stronger or more formidable opponent, acting on ill-conceived plans results in misfortune or upset, hurting or insulting someone. Transiting Neptune, sesqui-square Sun, feeling weak or fatigued, being in denial, lacking confidence, being very yielding, being very passive, being weak-willed, a cowardly act. Someone is trying to pull the wool over your eyes, being con, being deceived, being belittled or ridiculed. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan was totally in the dark about what was really going on. And it could have been the day of his death, the day of this massacre, that he basically found out that it was more than what he even imagined. Being incompetent, being forced into submission, being suckered into a deal, being humiliated, being full of self-pity, relinquishing control or authority, dizziness, nausea, a surreal or bizarre experience, being hypersensitive, an illogical experience, being, I had that twice, being an illogical or nonsensical person, an odd or strange man, an otherworldly experience, paranormal activity, someone is behaving in a strange or ridiculous manner, being over inebriated, an adverse reaction to street or prescription drugs, recoiling in fear, longing for deliverance, escapism, being under an illusion, hypnosis, a hypnotic atmosphere or hypnotic music, displaying chameleon-like tendencies, being mocked, wearing or making a costume. Also, the transiting North Node was forming a sextile with his ascendant, receiving a lot of praise or applause, and this was by other wayward teens who thought these two were cool. Assuming a leadership position, this could be dishonorable mention, being the top draft pick, an opportunity to do something new for a change, an exciting opportunity, advancement, demonstrating more initiative, a positive change in terms of your outlook on life. Well, we know that didn't, well, he could have been, feeling more confident that they were about to shoot up the school and soon it would be all over when he offed himself, supposedly. Redeeming yourself. Transiting Pluto, sextile Saturn, a successful collaboration, becoming more empowered on a professional level, receiving a lot of support, the successful completion of a project, becoming more influential, gaining a degree of prominence, forming a connection with someone of prominence, being in the right place at the right time, prime time, reaching your peak, receiving recognition for those who matter, becoming immortalized, accomplishing a great feat, a rise in terms of status, redemption. Chiron semi-square ascendant. This is where he was wounded, experiencing aches or pain, an adrenaline pumping experience, exceptional circumstances that put you in a bind, being accosted, doing the unexpected, displaying shocking or startling behavior, keyed up nerves, being physically taxed, carrying an unusual load, being identified as the culprit, being jerked around, getting wound up. creating a stir or upset, being in the midst of chaos, operating under duress. Someone is twisting your arm to do something against your will, acting out of character, behaving in an odd or strange manner, being singled out, vexation, mistaken identity, an issue with your name or identification arises, circumvention, being rubbed the wrong way, being on high alert. Now, here are some of Eric's transits. Transiting Saturn, quincunx Saturn, being overworked, working overtime, time is not on your side, system failure or malfunction, as was the case with the bombs not going off. An ambitious undertaking, a need to set limitations, the last straw. Enough is enough. And again, this transit can deal with where, again, somebody else took over once they had gotten into the school. An unfavorable adjustment in terms of an agreement, karmic retribution, dwindling resources, depression. Transiting Chiron, quincunx moon, a gut-wrenching experience, a serious problem within the home or your living situation, a family crisis, a problem involving your mother, having problems with gaining access to a private or secure place, an awkward situation, emotional trauma, heartache, a painful goodbye, being filled with grief, a sad moment, experiencing great sorrow, turbulent emotions, circumstances which create a great deal of insecurity, feeling like a fish out of water, feeling out of place, a weird, odd, or bizarre experience, an anomaly, an upset stomach or severe indigestion, sustaining an injury to the chest or midsection, feeling very uneasy about someone or something, being on high alert, an invasion of privacy, violation of trust, indecency, highly inappropriate behavior. Transiting Uranus square Chiron, an unbelievable situation, an odd occurrence, being incredulous, an egregious offense, perversion, being shocked or dismayed as a result of what occurs, unforeseen obstacles arise, being insulted, a heartbreaking decision, heartache, being emotionally or physically wounded, expect the unexpected. Murphy's Law is in effect, so create a plan B and possibly C. Being caught off guard, an anomaly. A period of uncertainty or insecurity, a tense situation, waiting on pins and needles, being neurotic, artifice, undesirable changes, the end of a friendship, someone is being very rude or inconsiderate, undergoing a period of drastic change, attempting to buck the system, being a rebel or rebel rouser, refusing to put up with someone's ill treatment of you any longer, someone is stepping on your toes, a gut-wrenching situation. Transiting Chiron, trine Mercury, acquiring a special skill, undergoing specialized training, being in a position of privilege or advantage. Keep in mind that these outer transits were already in effect before the massacre. Here you're going to see some of the artwork by some of their fans. So his Eric's lunar return was taking place on the day of the shooting, right at the time they started shooting, which I thought was interesting because that's just exacerbating those intense emotions that he experiences with that moon in the 8th house and the death theme. He also was going through his Mercury return. So his Mercury return, with Mercury being in Aries, that just exacerbated the whole acts of violence and his violent tendencies. Transiting North Node semi-square Jupiter, a need to watch your step, being in danger of losing your balance and falling, being overwhelmed by the goings-on around you, feeling out of place or that you stand out like a sore thumb, committing a social faux pas, an inability to free yourself from an undesirable situation, having to do a lot of walking. And from what I remember reading, they did walk to school that day. Instead of, I think they usually would get a ride or ride their bikes or whatever, but they walked and they were walking up a hill. And they were videotape walking up a hill. And I'm like, who was taping that? Anyway, feeling caged in or cornered. Transiting Chiron sesqui square Mars. So this is the fatal shot. Aches and pains, a serious injury, being disruptive or uncooperative, a physical challenge, getting fired up, acting out of character, taking an unpopular course of action, a head injury, a pounding headache, an egregious offense, excruciating pain, being impulsive leads to disaster or regret, acting out, encountering an unusual obstacle, being personally attacked, transiting North Node trine Mars, wiping the slate clean. Your name gains more notoriety or recognition, being filled with more drive or determination. A new man enters your life, excitement, demonstrating more initiative, doing something that requires courage, spicing things up, an enjoyable physical activity, being daring, being motivated to succeed, executing a plan, being energized, a positive turning point, being more assertive results in getting your way, getting a gun or some other kind of weapon, learning how to shoot a gun or some other defense method, purchasing new tools or a set of knives, an ability to proceed to the next level, entering a new phase in your life. So that concludes my case study on Columbine. Thank you again, Kawaii Honey, for sponsoring this. And just let me know what you think in the comment section. Do you believe the official narrative, or do you think there was something more to this story? I definitely believe that there's something more to this story. Their charts point to that as well, especially when you take into account the houses and planets representing their parents, and especially when you think about Dylan's mother's background as well as Eric's father's background. So yeah, so that concludes this case study. If you would like to sponsor a case study, send me an email. I'll put my email address in the description section, and just send me an email in the subject line, put sponsor case study, and then we can talk about how much the sponsorship is and all that. If you would like a reading, you could go to my website, Rahbinah.com. It's in the description section as well. Peace, many blessings, and I'll be back with some more videos.